Hi everyone, welcome at the Innovation Café. Sorry a bit for the delay, also for the people at home watching, thanks for your patience. So for the people that haven't been at the Innovation Café before, I've seen some new faces. We're a networking event here at Görgen Home of Design, where we show what Eindhoven has to offer in the fields of tech and design and innovation in general. So we do this every week. So every week we have a different speaker. Today we have a talk by Bram and Jonas, who are going to talk about their project. I'll let you do the further introduction. But yeah, for everyone that's here for the first time, we hope of course that we will see you again more often. And you can view the program on ehvinnovationcafé.org. And I'll see you after the talk. Good luck.
Thank you. All right, welcome. As Margot said, I'm Bram de Vos. This is Jonas Görgen. We've collaborated together on the project Uprooting Urbanism. This has been a process of around 6 months, where it started before with another continuation, and we collaborated now for this, almost I think the third part of this whole collaboration. So it's quite a long process. We are standing here as well because we have participated in the Makersxchange funding of the European Union. It's funded by the European Union. This made it able for us to work together and to collaborate on this new project, but also make it visible, to create certain models about our system and how our project can look like in the future scenario. So let me start the presentation. I'll do a bit and then Jonas will take it over from there and we'll try to get a good flow into it. So 6 months ago, I was here as well. I was taking part in the Innovation Café. Back then, it was all about my graduation project, Uprooting Ecosystems, which I graduated with at the Design Academy. In these 6 months, a lot has happened, and Jonas and I started to grow closer together in our collaborations, and this we'll be sharing today. So let me go through like a quick review, like a quick recap of what my project Uprooting Ecosystem is, because I think that's the base that we started to work from. So you have an idea what the base is, and from there we will continue the kind of like the timeline that we went through in the past months. So here you have it, Uprooting Ecosystems. I graduated in 2020 at the Design Academy. This project is like a strong visualization of how it could look like if a city would become self-sufficient in its agricultural supply. It is a provocative scenario where it's all about combining certain systems and focusing on not just one solution, but trying to have this collective idea of like how certain solutions can be brought together and how we can compromise the minimizes we might have to make. This landscape next to Amsterdam, called the Waterland, I redesigned to a high-efficient an urban land that could provide food for Amsterdam itself. I have focused on 3 farming systems, and the main focus of choosing these 3 systems is that they complement each other. I don't want to talk too negative now, but like as a quick recap, we all know certain issues in the world about like climate change and whatnot. Monoculture as the system that we use now, still nowadays after the Second World War, it was created. This system had to be kind of like the utopian idea of how we could feed the world. And unfortunately, after this system of like using one idea that should solve everything, it has created a lot of like negative side effects into our world, as we are all, I think, conscious about today. So I really want to get rid of that, like this one idea has to solve everything. And that's why I did this research into different agricultural systems, new ones, but also old ones, and see how the combination of certain elements together could bring us more options and possibilities. So here you see synthropic farming, food forest, and vertical farming. Synthropic farming is a great system for, as a good competitor for monoculture, as in high efficiency. It is great for biodiversity, and it's in a certain sense is like a good variation for seasonal diversity. But as I said, every system has a pro and a con. A con of synthropic farming is that it has a relatively small variety on the square kilometer. And that's, for example, where food forest is the best one in. Food forest on a square kilometer, for example, can grow up to 500 varieties of certain species. So food forest can be the counter side of synthropic farming to still provide all the variety of certain foods that we want to have in a supermarket. And they kind of act as the lungs of our city. They filter out all the pollutants and create like this better environment for us to live next to. Although synthropic farming and food forests both sound great, you still have a negative side of both of them as well, which is that you cannot produce for all seasons if you want to produce next to a city. And that's where our new technology, vertical farming, is a great one in. Is an artificial environment where you can create certain crops that are never affected by a certain UV or season, whatever. It's always a consistent environment, so the production can continue through all the seasons. So just like briefly, what I focused on, like 3 systems, and why I think we should focus more on combining certain solutions together. These drawings and the images that you saw, they came together in my model in the Waterland that I redesigned. So here you see vertical farming, here you see synthropic farming, and here you see food forest, all both kind of like connected in a very organic way of how we could redesign such a landscape. The next part is that it's not all about the systems, especially if we want to think about how certain areas next to the city could provide new elements for the city. Like it's not only about like finding the new agricultural systems, but it's also about finding new systems of transport, how to include farmers, how to include inhabitants, how can we use our water a bit different. All these topics, they can provide, like, create new alternatives for the way we're doing it right now, especially also for Amsterdam, like it has its old canals. So it would be a beautiful approach to use it for transport, for example, from the Waterland to the city center. I'm not going to go too deep in it, but I really try to approach this as like a holistic idea where so many parts of our daily life can be slightly re-changed to like a new belief of how we could work and live all together. Although when I was working on this proposal on my graduation, I actually never realized what I did. In the end, actually it came together when it was just all about starting a conversation. Like for me, it was just a moment of a way to show how it can be done differently and how to get others on board to think along with me, and together we could come up with like new solutions and new varieties of our urban living. So for me, this whole project in the end was just to start the conversation and to get it going of like where we want to focus on for example, like the Paris Agreement and the climate change and how we can design these answers for these big topics that we have today. Because there are many questions, and cities and governments, they have tons of questions about like certain transitions that we're going through, but the answers are still missing. So for us as a designer, it's a great time to focus on these questions and to find these answers for these certain transitions that we all have questions about. So that's the base that we started to work from. And from here, Jonas is going to take it over.
Right. Hello everyone, let me briefly introduce myself. So my name is Jonas. I also graduated from Design Academy. I'm based in Brussels, also designer, and my general field of expertise is also sustainable design, but also circularity. After my graduation, I've worked the last 2 years at a Brussels-based design studio called Open Structures. It's an open modular construction system. And I've also recently become more interested in urbanism and will soon start a master in urban design and spatial planning. My past projects dealt with questions such as how you could take a shower that's comfortable using just 1 liter of water, or, for example, how to break out the confinement of architecture using a line that can go around the corner. So when Bram approached me to ask whether I can join him for this project, he asked me specifically to look at the aspect of waste within the whole system, and specifically how from food to waste, how you can close the loop to make food again from waste. This is a bit more detailed, an overview of the streams, let's say the stream of nutrients in such a system, and the gap you have on the waste end. Because it's a super local economy, right? You have to see that everything stays within the loop. So from this challenge, I was looking at what is the best way of bringing these nutrients back into the soil, into the circulation. So one option, of course, is composting, but the humble compost heap. Not everything is compostable. It's not kind of, it's one option, but it's not good for everything. Another thing that's been done nowadays is, of course, gas digestion, but that's a very high-tech industrial process. And I've also heard that, I think the number is that only a few percent of the whole energy can be, in the end, recuperated from the digestion process. So it's also not that ideal. And perhaps surprisingly, through a conversation with my grandmother, I learned about a whole other opportunity, because I asked her, what did you do back then when you didn't have the orange bin in your backyard, right? And she said, well, we just had a pig in the backyard, in the room there, right? We just, whatever is left after cooking, we just feed it to the pigs. Okay, well. And it turns out indeed, pigs are extremely efficient at turning waste into food again. The precise number is actually 1 to 3, so a pig eats 3 kilos of food waste and will create about 1 kilo of body weight, right? Like 1 kilo of meat. So that's quite remarkable efficiency. And the most important thing is that it is things that humans can't eat, right? It's waste. So it's not competing with us for food. So, assuming that pig farms could fill this gap, we would then end up with a flow of creating 2 products. One would be, of course, meat as food, and the other product is fertilizer. That goes back to the fields, and the meat re-enters the food chain. This is how kind of the food chain looks in terms of transportation and locations in the city, as kind of an overview of the closed circuit system. Of course, I've already talked a bit about meat, a bit of a controversial topic nowadays, of course, because there's the general notion that meat is not sustainable, right? So I was wondering, where does this notion come from? And well, the biggest factor is food, or the feed, how we feed animals, because we started to feed animals more and more with grain or other parts of plants that are edible for humans. So animals become competitors with humans for food, right? And we grow food, especially just for the animals. In this case, I want to highlight a study from Eindhoven, Eindhoven and Mol, which I found quite remarkable. In this study, they looked at the environmental impact of meat, right? And what they found, I thought this was kind of the key piece of the study, which is a figure that I'll explain. So on this axis, you see the environmental impact, right? So from low to high, and this is the amount of animal products consumed. So point A is 0 animal products consumed, and point B is the amount of animal products that can be produced only using leftovers from food production. So up to this point, there is very little environmental impact. However, once you pass that point and you have to grow extra food just to feed this surplus of demand, the environmental impact rises very rapidly. And this line that is representing the consumption of the Netherlands today. And quite a beautiful detail I thought in this study was that they calculated if you take the total food residue in the Netherlands and how much meat you could generate with it, it sort of exactly matches the amount that's recommended by health organizations as an intake. Of course, in countries like the Netherlands or European countries, the consumption is higher than that. I thought it was quite a simple match. Also, it's not just me who's randomly saying this, right? This is a quote I found from actually the chairman of the producers' organization for pig farming, right? She says that you should use pigs against food waste because the pig is one of the few animals that can handle food leftovers for human consumption. And through this animal, the enormous amount of food residues can be given a useful purpose, and thus partially closing the food and climate cycles again. So it's something that is, both said by scientists as well as by the industry. However, the reason why we're not doing it is, as so many things, policy. Because maybe you remember in the 2000s there's been a lot of kind of health questions with the foot and mouth disease or mad cow disease, which are all kind of risks that are amplified by the ever-growing amounts of animals in farms. So if you, for example, have 200 pigs in one stable, if one pig gets ill, then you have to kill the whole flock, the whole group. So that is causing ever bigger damages to farmers, which is why policymakers became ever more careful, but with these negative results. So yeah, these are kind of my reflections, and this was now what I showed was one example of how animals can actually be part of the solution instead of the problem. And of course, the same goes for cows or chickens. They all have certain functions if they only are allowed to eat what they're meant to eat, right? If you feed cows grass instead of grain, or if you let chickens pick the pests in crops, they can also help with soil regeneration if you just allow them to fulfill their function. This takes me to the extension, let's say the third extension of the project, which was then made possible by this Makersxchange fund, where we were looking a bit how to bring this further, because we've been always looking at Amsterdam so far as a location, but of course this should work for any location, right? But we were then thinking how to come up with tools to make this planning more easy, feasible, and interactive. First of all, we expanded a bit the methods of farming we were looking at. So we added, for example, strip cropping, which is heavily researched at the moment in Wageningen, for example, which is where you plant crops in strips. I think it's quite efficient, and I think it's also another benefit is that you can use tractors and machinery. Aquaponics we added because that's a very interesting and beautiful method. Of course, there's always a bit of question with economics, because sometimes, it depends from company to company whether they manage to be profitable or not. But we thought it was too beautiful of a system to kind of leave out, right? Yeah. And the last one we added was Aqua Forestry, which kind of fits nicely between strip cropping and synthropic farming, because it's not quite as wild as synthropic farming or food forest, and not quite so strictly organized. It's practically just wider, as I understood, wider rows of crops in between rows of trees, such as fruit trees and nut trees for production, and they of course all benefit each other depending on what species you plant. I also want to briefly talk about urban design, because we've been looking a bit at where on this is a transect from rural to most urban, and we've been looking a bit at where on the urban scale you would apply such kind of niche or unusual agrosystems. And you can see most of them are sort of aimed at the suburban zone and rural zone, but some of them also work in more densely populated areas. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Bram, who will tell you more about the methods we've been working on.
Thank you. Awesome. So that was like all the great research that we've done in the last months, and we were so happy with the outcomes of the research, but it was such a struggle to visualize this and to make this come across to others, and also to engage others to design with us about these certain problems that are and how we can give these answers to these problems. So the physical aspect, which then was great to have the funding to actually work with the materials and try to make the models more physical. We focused on this the 6 systems that Jonas just showed you and the pig farm, of how this holistic idea could be brought together with certain people around the table. So as I said, with my project, what I realized in the end, what was actually the outcome, is that I started the conversation, right? I started the conversation by like showing how it could be done differently as well. And I think that's a great important tool as a designer as well, to be able to communicate the research and to make it visible to others. So we wanted to provoke that a bit and really focus on this idea of, like, for example, that we together will go to the government of Den Haag. Let's say we say like, hey, you have this piece of ground here next to the city. You're using it now in this way, but you see, you've said that your goals are more focusing on this, on this way, on this path, I would say. We think you could do it a bit different, and that's why we have like these 7 systems that could change that certain area next to the city, and where you could actually talk about like the answers of the questions they have. So from this idea of like being around the table and with others, you try to create this idea that they have, but like to make it more visible and to start this conversation. We have worked on these variety of models. So here you saw the image. It's not finished, but we will show you for now how far we are. The design week is the end goal where this needs to be finished. So here you see an overview of like you see vertical farming, you have aquaponics and strip cropping, like all the 6 images that you saw before. These are now this will become the visualization and the physical aspect of the representation of these 6 methods. This we made just to, because like we've talked a lot about like more like the in-depth story behind it and how it's used right now, or like how it looks right now, but it's still quite hard to imagine of like what we're actually talking about, right? This model should make it easier, and that's why I've made these like 1 to 100 scales, like 20 hectare space where you can actually kind of like look in depth into this system. So this is in process, but with these like 1 to 100 tiles, you cannot really actually like create an entire map together with the right around the right amount of people around the table. Like 1 to 100 is just like a too small scale if you talk about like let's say 100,000 hectares. So we had to make another addition to this, which we created these tiles that you see. So on the right you see 3 varieties of tiles. They all correspond to a certain scale. And then all the way on the right you see an image where we laid over these tiles. They're now actually laid over a map here in Eindhoven. The map itself is on a scale of 1 to 5,000. And for example, the big one here then represents 25 hectares. So to get it clear, these 3 tiles, they still correspond to strip cropping, and these tiles like provoke the idea of that, like together we can build this map, together we can make this map. And so we're going to do this for all the 6 systems that we did the research on and that we are going to create. And this will be ready by Dutch Design Week 2021. So here, that's our deadline. We're now halfway in the process. I think we've did most of the research now. It's just mainly focused now about making. With Josephine as well, we're participating in the Drive and Dutch Design course, and we'll be exhibiting our work in the Pullman Hotel. That's where we'll be exhibiting this project as well. Hopefully you can be there as well. And then together we can give this presentation again, but then actually physical with the model itself. But the end goal of this presentation, of this project, as I said, is to get the right people around the table. So we're searching for like governments, municipalities, scientists, investors, just call them. There's so many groups that are important for these areas next to cities, like the urban areas next to the city, that we would love to talk about, and with them we believe we can create like a better future for our urban areas next to our cities. After this goal has been reached, at the same time there's still a great expo coming up. It's the Floriade. That will happen from April till October next year, which is the every 10 years this exhibition is being created in the Netherlands, all about like the World Expo of urban design, but also like how certain things in the garden work, just the whole picture of like gardening and farming. We'll be presenting our work there as well. So yeah, a lot in the line, but also very exciting too, and very hopeful that others are going to come along with us and think together about certain solutions that we can design together. And that will be it. Thank you. super clear.
Did you already approach governments or cities? Did you already get some feedback from people that are in charge? Or are you waiting until you are finished with the...
Yeah, it was kind of the moment, I think in a week or so, we will start the process of approaching governments and others. I have been in contact with the Council of Eindhoven already, which has been very positive so far about the process. But it's not the only part that I want to have around the table. Like, it needs to be like this whole holistic idea of like certain interests. So that's going to be part in the planning of the coming week as well to get that. Yeah.
Then,
thank you.
Thanks guys for the presentation. Thanks for
thanks.
everyone listening, and also for the people at home. Just to let you know, so I said it before, we're a weekly event. By chance, we have it that next week is a special event here at Kazerne, which you will be able to follow online, but unfortunately we won't have a live audience that can just walk in. It's for a special audience only, but yeah, if you want to follow it, it's the Kazerne Design Award. It's an event by our own by Kazerne, where we have 8 nominees from the graduation show, where we chose like one of them that we think is the most promising, and they get a prize of €5,000, so that will be the award show, so you can follow that there. But for now, I want to say thanks for watching, and we hope to see you maybe then and otherwise the weeks after. Once again, if you want to see the full program, go to ehvinnovationcafé.org. So thanks for watching. For everyone here, I want to invite you all to come and have a drink. You all got your coin, you can hand it in at the bar for a drink, beer, wine, or something non-alcoholic. And we will also have a few snacks coming in, so if you will join us, then you can go and have a chat.
Please do so.
See you talking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marco.
Yep.